A lot obviously gets made of the fact that, Nigel Farage is an MP, but we also forget that, of course, Richard Tice, also an MP as well for Boston and Skegness. And it turns out that, well, once again, just as we've seen from a year of, well, Nigel Farage doing absolutely nothing to help out his constituency, doing basically anything he can to try and get good PR without, actually helping locals or even, doing a surgery to meet with them. you know, the difference is night and day where you look at Nigel Farage's now weekly column in the Clacton Gazette, and oh boy, they are, well, short and sweet with, I am doing something. And you're like, well, hold on, how does this really help the people in your area? Meanwhile, when we looked at the article that I had a look and actually spoke to the people who live there, no one's even seen him. He hasn't even turned up to a town council meeting. He hasn't even met other town councillors or met with the local council in over a year. Meanwhile, of course, today we're covering Richard Tice, who's got a grand plan for a completely unfunded public transport idea, to which he is now being accused of living in a dream world. Ladies and gentlemen, your Reform MPs. So, before we get on into this fantastic dreamlike idea of Richard Tice's, please do, of course, remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And, of course, don't forget to ring the bell as well. So there is also the links down below to the Patreon page, the Buy Me Coffee link where you can, well, buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button, and, of course, as always, there is the YouTube membership button down below as well. So thank you very much to everyone who does help and support the channel that way. So let's crack on then into this, shall we? Coming from the Lincolnshire Online with Boston and Skegness MP Richard Tice now accused of living in a dream world with transport plan which includes dueling A16 and Boston bypass. So, the man behind a bold plan for transport which would include dueling the A16 has been described as living in a dream world. The deputy leader for Reform UK, Richard Tice, last week unveiled his hopes now for a long-awaited Boston bypass, and of course dueling the A16 between Boston and Peterborough to deliver various rail and local improvements in a plan which he says would cost £495 million. Calls have also been made for the A16 to be dual since the new road around Crowland opened more than a decade ago. And while the fight for a bypass in Boston dates all the way back to the 1940s, neither of these aspirational projects have ever progressed. While, of course, this plan has been celebrated by, of course, senior reform leaders in the country, concerns have now been raised over how this dream will actually ever be funded and whether Mr. Tice has his sums right. The MP for South Holland and Deerings, Sir John Hayes, said it is very clear a wish list and will have to now be very carefully costed. I really want a really careful feasibility study about the costings before we actually raise public expectations. John, of course, pointed out the recent improvements to the McDonald's and Grenfell roundabouts on the A16 were, of course, multi-million-pound projects. He said, I do appreciate that it is a nice thing to wish for, but there is not a feasibility study or even proper costings. Meanwhile, the leader of the South District Council, Councillor Nick Worth, also does not feel that these projects will actually entice government funding. And at the same time, the Greater Lincolnshire Mayor, Andrew Jenkins, to quote, prove her power and influence. He said, you, of course, can't knock him for his ambition, and his ideas will, of course, be received by the public, particularly in Boston. But the current government are now investing very heavily in urban areas, not rural areas. This is now a massive ask. As much as I would love to, of course, see the A16 duelled, along with now rail improvement connections, the reality is somewhat very different. There is only so much money to go around, and he is clearly now trying to drive an agenda of both the county council and the mayor, and the pressure that will now be on them to deliver. And this, of course, without now increasing their borrowing, which they made much of during the election campaign. Again, remember that. Oh, yeah, we're not going to increase borrowing, but oh, yeah, I want to do this fantastic project, but I'm not going to increase borrowing to, pay for the project. Anyway, I guess we'll, of course, now find out how much power and influence the mayor really has and what her and the county council's priorities really are. As they say, the proof will be in the pudding. David Johns, the chairman of the Cycling and Crane Group in Pedals, was of course not impressed by the A16 plans, and he's not even hopeful about the rail links. He said, I'm not personally even keen on spending money to do the A16. The main problem is driver impatience and unskilled driving generally. Although some of the kind of flyover solution at Southern Roundabout would probably be additionally helpful in this case of safety. Otherwise, I do feel that bad drivers should not be rewarded by millions of pounds spending on a dual carriageway road. Campaigners are, of course, having difficulty trying to get the railway line to Wisbech reopened. And of course, the track is, of course, still in place, though neglected. I think Tice is, of course, living in a dream world. And what I would like to see, as would John, isn't, of course, Mr. Tice's constituency, could, of course, be a cause espoused by the Lincolnshire mayor, which should, of course, now be the reopening of the Littleworth station. This would, of course, then reduce car traffic on the A16 and into Peterborough, and I could actually imagine it being useful to people travelling from places to place east of Spalding. While, of course, some people are very skeptical about these proposals, Tice's grand plan has, of course, been praised by senior leaders in reform. Andrew Jenkins said, across the whole country, you have major transport and infrastructure challenges, some, of course, real congestion hotspots. That means longer journeys for residents and delayed now and loss of productivity for businesses. It's great to see Richard Tice cares deeply about this issue and, of course, is looking for solutions to traffic problems in Boston while listening to local concerns. Well, if he really does care about, traffic and congestion, one of the big things you could do is, I don't know, build some sort of, high-speed rail, which Reform has opposed very, very vociferously. Anyway, she continued. He said, historically, of course, Lincolnshire have received very little else in transport funding from central government than other areas. I do look forward with trying to work for Richard to and, of course, other politicians try and fight for our fair share of national funding. Here's who can try and get Lincolnshire moving forward. Councillor Sean Matthews, another leader of the county council, so he was, of course, excited by these proposals. Then, like I say, these aren't going to get anywhere because how are you going to fund them? This is it. How are you going to fund them? He said it is, of course, great to see an MP like Richard, who really does care so passionately about his constituents, championing the plan for Boston. Really, he cares so much about his constituents. He's barely been in his constituency. Yeah, great care and passionate about his constituents. Hardly ever been there. This is, of course, clearly something that really matters to, of course, local residents too, and of course have huge resonance for Lincolnshire as a whole. I'm excited to look into the proposals in detail to see how this develops. You haven't even got a plan about how these are going to be working. Is there a feasibility study? Has already been mentioned. Where's the money going to be coming from? At Lincolnshire County Council, we want to save as much money as we can and make sure it's spent on things that residents truly care about, including better roads. So why don't you then, as Lincolnshire County Council, commit to spending that plan? Put some money forward. I don't know. Maybe borrow more. Oh, that's right. You ran an entire campaign on not doing that. Anyway, with Richards now trying to fight for his constituencies this way, it is, of course, now down to the government to try and understand the needs for better infrastructure in Lincolnshire. We will, of course, support Richard and Andrea to try and encourage them to take this as they seriously as we do. And again, yeah, not going to happen. As has been pointed out, no feasibility study, complete, absolute nonsense, non-starter, something that has been asked for since the 1940s in the bypass for Boston, never even happened. No feasibility study. Where's this money going to be coming from? Reform ran a whole campaign about not increasing borrowing. This, ladies and gentlemen, is populism. You say stuff that is popular But the reality is, if you want to do it, you need to increase borrowing. Would have Reform said, we ain't going to increase borrowing. Well, how else are you going to fund this? You know? So, as always, thank you very much, of course, for watching. And of course, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.